Rev up your engines!
James Self said, Scotty, will you be reviewing the Mustang E? Well, I'd love to. And Ford used to send me cars all the time, but they stopped a couple years ago. Because they didn't like, I guess, my reviews of their cars, because I'm an honest reviewer. And they made some. They had problems with that 10-speed automatic and the turbos breaking. And obviously, they didn't like me telling the world about it, so I doubt if they'll ever send me a Mustang E. But anyone near Clarksville has a Mustang E, bring it to me. I'd love to try it around, do a test, scan it with my machine, tell people about it. Be an honest review, as long as you don't mind me telling the truth. Tell me any problems you've had or what you like, and then I'll check it all out and go from there. So if anybody does, hey, get a hold of me. Scotty Kilmer at gmail.com. Bring one over. I'll try it out. But I know Ford ain't going to be sending them to me anymore. If you watch the video I made a few weeks ago, I called out all the electric car manufacturers, and I said, if you're not all full of crap, give me one for a year to try out to see, can you drive them long distance? Can they tow? How far they can go? I haven't received anything from any of them because they're all free. I cash out says, Scotty, is there any used BMW that is reliable? Well, it would have to be really low mileage. They're relatively reliable from new to a few years, but then they cost a fortune to maintain, and you lose your shirt because their resale value is garbage. I've met mechanic friends that they bought them when they were like 6, 7 years old from customers who were sick of fixing them, and they got them real cheap, and even they got rid of them in a year. They said, this thing's nickel and diming me to death. All parts are so expensive. They're always breaking. So, the first few years, BMWs are very reliable cars, but let's say you pay 70 grand for one, and then 4 years later you sell it, you're lucky if you get 20. You lost an awful lot of money on a deal. Sario says, I got a Lexus RC 350F for every day, and I pick up my kid at school. What do you think of it? Well, you probably spent an awful lot of money on that 350. They're phenomenal cars. I've driven them. I've worked on them. I mean, they are fast, they're fun, but they're a Lexus, so they're totally dependable, and they ride quite well with the suspension setup that they have with the variable geometry suspension system. I mean, what the heck? You can put it on rough so you can drive like a maniac. You put it on smooth for when the kids are in the car and the wife. They are. If you don't mind spending that kind of money, they're very expensive cars. They are very well-made cars. There's no arguing the quality. They're quiet inside. And yeah, you can drive them every day. I gotta say, back in 2013 when I had a Shelby Cobra GT500, that thing, you could drive that every day too. Now, it was a tremendous gas hog, but it rode well and it was smooth until you race in mode, and then it went like scalded egg. Dakota says, Scotty, why do my RPMs jump up and down when I let off the gas? If you let off the gas and it keeps going up and down and up and down, you probably have a vacuum leak somewhere in your system that it's sucking air, because if you let go of the throttle, it's supposed to go down, and it should go down smoothly, but if it goes up and down, you got a vacuum leak. Vacuum leaks will make it go up, down, up, down, up, down. So check for a vacuum leak. A lot of times you got a bad throttle that's sticking, and that'll do it, or a bad PCV valve that's sucking air, and that'll do it. Now, the only other thing I've seen it do go up and down is if your transmission's starting to go down and it's just downshifting too much, going that would mean the transmission is wearing out because it's downshifting too harshly. George Starbley says, Scotty, what's your opinion on the new 2022 Honda Civic? Recently got one. They're excellent vehicles. I mean, they're not giving them away. They're relatively expensive for a small car, but personally, from my experience of driving them, as an everyday driver, I would much rather have a Honda Civic Si than the Honda Civic R. Now, this Honda Civic R is a screaming race car, but there's no way I could drive that thing with my wife cross country. It just rides too rough. She would probably get in one. She's never been in one, but if she was, she'd probably say, get me out of this thing. I'm low to the ground. I feel every bump. Where the SI has a much smoother suspension system. So you kind of got the best of both worlds. A fast, zippy little car that gets good gas mileage. It looks cool, but it doesn't ride like a race car where it's banging up and down. DC says, Scotty, I got a manual tranny, 14 Kia Soul with 140,000 miles. Should I sell it? Purrs kitten, it gets 35 miles going. No, I wouldn't sell it. What kills a lot of the Kias are the crappy automatic transmission. You don't have to worry about that. You got a standard transmission. I'd keep driving it. What the heck? You're playing with the bank's money anyways. You got 140,000 miles. Who knows? I've had customers with Kias get 300,000-400,000 miles out of their Kias if they change the engine oil and the coolant regularly and they had a standard transmission. I've never seen them go that far with an automatic, but with the standard, I've seen them do it. So I wouldn't get rid of it if I were you. Yes, sir, says, Scotty, do transmission coolers actually work? Well, of course they work. They are just a cooler. The transmission fluid's pumped through the cooler where it exchanges heat and then it goes back into the transmission. Now, most automatic transmissions all have a cooler built into the radiator. And you might think, wait a second, The radiator's got hot water in it. How's that cooling it? Well, the transmission fluid in the transmission gets a lot hotter than the radiator fluid does. So you're still cooling it down from a higher temperature, and they do work quite well. And here's a giant warning to anybody who decides, oh, I'm going to put a giant automatic transmission cooler on. It's made to run at a certain operating temperature. And you go buy some gigantic transmission cooler and put it in front of the radiator. You might run it too cool, and it won't work right, and it'll wear out, because they're not made to run at cold temperatures either. They're made to run at a certain middle temperature, just like your car's engine. It's made to run at a certain optimal temperature. Like some guys will take the thermostat out because their car's getting hot. Well, if it always stays in the cold when you're driving around, your engine's running too cold to wear the bearings of the engines. They're made to run at a certain temperature, so stick to what the engineers have designed. That's the best thing to do. Said says, Scotty, please explain catalytic converter back pressure and scavenging theory. Okay, catalytic converters have a certain amount of back pressure. The one reason that you want it in a catalytic converter is because the catalytic converter stores stuff in it and then it burns off the impurity of the hydrocarbons. If it flowed straight through, the catalytic converter wouldn't do its job correctly and get rid of the hydrocarbons. So it's got to have some back pressure so that it keeps some of the stuff in it longer. It just doesn't flow straight through and not do its job. And of course, you're never going to burn 100% of whatever. You're always going to have a little bit of pollution coming out of the car. So they're playing kind of a balancing act between not too much back pressure so it doesn't restrict the exhaust and you lose acceleration, and not too little so that it just flows through and doesn't burn the hydrocarbons. The engineers have been working on that stuff for years, so most of them have a pretty good idea what they're doing. Other than the Nissan ones, their catalytic converters are always going out. Tom C says, will a bad mass air sensor sometimes show up as a misfire in a scan tool? Oh yes, it can. The problem with the name Misfire, most people say it's not firing right, spark plugs aren't firing right. It can be, but it just means that the air-fuel mixture inside your cylinder, when it's being ignited, isn't being ignited correctly. It can be mass airflow sensor, if it's given the wrong data, saying that you're getting too much air when you aren't or not enough air when you are, and messes up the air-fuel ratio, it'll misfire. But so can valves that are leaking, head gasket leaks, lots of things, but it can happen. Realize all those codes for misfires are generic codes, and especially something like a misfire code, it can have like 20 different reasons for one particular code to trip, and it may have nothing to do with the ignition system whatsoever. Could even be a weak fuel injector, dripping too much fuel or not enough fuel. Ramos says, Scotty, my 2009 F-150 ABS brake light came on. What are your thoughts? All right. It means you got a problem with your anti-lock brake system. If it stops perfectly fine, you don't want to spend any money, live with it. ABS is fail-safe. When it stops working, it goes back to regular brakes, no ABS system, no anti-lock braking. Find a guy with a scan tool who knows what he's doing. He can plug in and he can tell you what the codes are. It might be a right rear wheel sensor. It'll tell you if the wheel sensors are working or not. It could be as simple as a bad wheel sensor, or even a piece of dirt or metal got stuck on they're magnetic on the sensor and the wheel, and then you just have to take it apart, clean it, put it back together. But you're only going to be able to know with the scan tool because it's all real encrypted information that anybody with a scan tool can figure it out in like 3 minutes. So find somebody with a scan tool and have them analyze it for you. Michael Pillar says, what is the best compact hybrid? I'd have to say the Toyota Corolla hybrid. They've only been making it for a few years, but it's based on the Prius platform, and that's been out for, 25 years or more. I've driven them. They get phenomenal gas mileage. They look a lot better than the Priuses. They're more stylish now. They made them look a lot nicer. But truthfully, if I was getting a hybrid, I get a Camry hybrid because they really look better, and they really handle better, and they really have more horsepower. I would go with the Camry if I was going to buy a hybrid. But the compact ones, I'd say the Toyota Corolla hybrid. Marcos Peterson says, what is or was the most reliable car you owned? My 94 Celica's got 250,000 miles on it. It's quite reliable. But then again, I bought it with 200,000 miles on it. The '07 Matrix is extremely reliable, but it's still going down the road, and it's only got 88,000 miles. And my wife's 20-year-old Lexus ES 300, it's 20 years old, and it's only got 85,000 miles, and they're all extremely reliable cars. So it's a toss-up between the three of them. And then I got 30 years out of my Toyota Corolla SR5 that I bought used for, $7,000. So who knows? They're all pretty reliable. Bracco Echo says, Scotty, turn the slow chat mode on from your end. You're probably watching it on a phone, right? And if you're watching it on a phone, you see the questions flip through. I guess that's the way the phones work, because my phone is right there, and it's broadcasting to you guys. But I am looking at my computer, my PC, on my big monitor. There's a big monitor here, and I'm being filmed with my 4K camera at the same time. So mine is just frozen. Mine doesn't go fast. It just sits there. And when I scroll the computer with the mouse, every time I click it, it goes up a frame, and then that's how I get to the next question. So I had no idea how to make the phone not flip around. I mean, if you're worried about that, either get it on a laptop or get it on a desktop like I have, and then you can just click it with your mouse and it'll stay in place. First time I did a chat, it was ridiculous because they were just flying. Like, how many you read these things? They're flying all over the place. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.